Hello, my name is Dan Swain, and today we're going to be doing a really quick and simple SignalR tutorial. If you want to look at the post that accompanies this video, if you go to my blog at d80.co.uk and just look around for SignalR, I'm sure you'll find it. Okay, let's go start it. So first things first, if we just create a simple sort of ASP.NET MVC free app, make sure it's .NET 4, that will be a good starting basis. I'm just going to create a simple, the home controller basically. I'm not going to do much in it. I'll just create a simple view as well. I won't even use a layout. That'll do us. Our app's going to be called Scrumboard. And maybe just put a simple each one. It says Scrumboard. Okay. Does that compile? Yes. So far so good. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is we need to add sort of SignalR and also KnockoutJs to our solution. So if we just right click and use the magic of NuGet, here's some I prepared earlier. If we add Knockout, Knockout's a model view model binding library that we're just going to use that to bind a simple form to our page or to our application. And then we're going to use SignalR to sort of do the sort of communication between our server side and client side code. Let's install that as well. So what SignalR basically is, it enables us to make like a persistent connection. In actual fact, I think their base class is called persistent connection, and it basically lets us sort of talk from the server back down to the client really conveniently. So you can literally call sort of JavaScript functions from within your C# code. So it's pretty nifty. And what we're going to be building is a really simple sort of to-do list or a Scrumboard application. So that's that. The first thing we'll do is if we just create a simple sort of data transfer object or a sort of model to play with. We're going to call it story or story card. So this is going to be the object that we fling from sort of between the client and server. It's going to have an ID, and then it's going to have a title, a description, and a state. We're not really going to get much into it, but the state would be, whether it's in to-do column or the in progress column or verify column or even done. So that's going to be our simple object. The next thing we need to do is we probably need to create a well, actually, should we go to the client side? So on the client side, the first thing we kind of need to do is to set up the sort of the KnockoutJs sort of model binding stuff, or model binding. So I suppose actually let's go back to the hub. So the first thing we need to create will be what I just referred to as a hub. So I'm going to create a folder called hubs. Sort of persistent connection is the base class, and what they've got is like a more sophisticated sort of wrapper of like often used functionality called a hub on top of the persistent connection. So I'm going to call this a Scrumboard hub, and the first thing we need to do is inherit from the hub class. It's telling us lives in SignalR, which it does indeed. This basically gives us access to some properties that will enable us to call our JavaScript code from C#. So that's pretty cool. We're going to create two simple methods in this class. The first one's going to be called getStories. So it's going to be a void method because it won't return anything directly, but it will call a function on the JavaScript side that will populate and ultimately an observable array, or a KnockoutJs observable array, and show some divs on the screen. So I'm just going to create some story cards. obviously you should use a proper ORM or something to store your stories, but for our purposes this will do. A new story card, ID 1, title, story 1, description, story 1, description, state is going to be to do. That'll do. We'll just have 2 of them, just for to demonstrate really. Oops, comma. If we just change this to 2. Okay, so there we have a collection of 2 stories, and now this is where sort of some of the magic will start to appear. We're going to call the caller, or the page that loaded and called our server-side function, and we're going to call the populate stories JavaScript function. I'll give it the JavaScript naming convention. You don't actually have to. And then I'm going to give it the story cards collection that I've kind of hard coded, and I'm going to make it an array because that seems to work better. So we haven't written this yet, but this will be a JavaScript function inside of our client side. So if I flip back to the client side, so the first thing we need to do is we need to include some JavaScript libraries that will let us basically interact with not only SignalR but also Knockout's model binding stuff as well. I'm going to paste them in because I always get it wrong when I type. I don't think we need that. So we've got jQuery. What app doesn't use jQuery nowadays? SignalR is actually implemented as a jQuery plugin, so that's why we need jQuery. And there's SignalR. And we also need KnockoutJs to do our sort of model view model binding stuff. I'll sort of highlight that in a second now. And then we also need this sort of connects to SignalR on the server side. It sort of is the proxy that we go through. I'm not sure quite how it hooks itself in. I believe it uses like some sort of activator to sort of hook the web apps or the MVC routing and add itself in, but it works basically. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to firstly sort of define a div. I'm going to copy and paste quite a lot on this, I'm afraid. So this will be a list of stories ultimately, and we're saying it's a data bind, KnockoutJs data bind, use a template called story template, which doesn't exist yet, and bind to the stories sort of function on our JavaScript view model, which we also haven't defined yet. So I'm afraid a bit more copy and paste. This is our story template as defined, or as mentioned here. So as you see, we're going to again data bind the ID property to an ID attribute. The h3 will become the title, a paragraph for the description, and a label for the state. So ultimately what we will hope to get is a list of divs that will appear inside here, and they will bind to our get stories method. Okay, now this is where the fun part begins. So what we need to do is define our JavaScript view model. I'm going to sneak it in the middle here. If I just say script, I'm going to embed it directly in the page. Not really best practice, but this is just a tutorial. Don't do this at home. So just same way as you would any sort of JavaScript, jQuery plugin really. The first thing we need to do is define our view model sort of object. We're going to call it scrumboard, unsurprisingly. Scrumboard. Oh, if only I could type. I don't think we're going to need any parameters. We'll add stuff onto this, but we know we need a populate stories, and we know we need a few other bits. So what we also need to do is connect to the SignalR hub. If I say this hub, and I'm going to say this is accessing, so that's accessing the SignalR. Sorry, forgot a dot. Scrumboard hub. So that's basically creating our connection to the SignalR hub. We actually, I think I've overlooked a bit here. We also need to sort of new up our sort of our view model and sort of basically start the SignalR connection. So we haven't actually done that yet. But I'm going to copy and paste a few bits in just to get ourselves basically up and running. Let's just do this first. So the first thing when this page loads, we're going to create a view model called scrumboard. And it's going to be what we've just defined directly above. Then what we need to do is we need to tell SignalR to sort of the hub to start, basically. And then we can pass it a function, and basically say if we call our view model, and we'll call an init function. And what this is going to do is init will call the SignalR, the C#'s hub get stories method. And that will sort of kickstart our whole sort of application off. I think I need to do that. And what we then need to do is tell Knockout to apply the bindings for our view model called scrumboard. It's a bit confusing, isn't it? But we basically create our sort of JavaScript view model. We start the SignalR stuff up, and we call init on our view model, and that will in turn call the function on the C# code, and then we tell Knockout to apply all the bindings on the view model to the HTML. So back to this. So we have our connection to the hub there. It's accessible by sort of this.hub. What we also need to define is some stories. So this will be our sort of our collection, which are for each loop just here. So we'll iterate round. That's going to be a knockout observable array. Just like that. Bang. Tony Cooper. So that's going to be our observable array, which we'll be able to add stories onto. I'm just going to sort of make it a bit more accessible. Boom. Cool. Okay, we need to define the init function. So this is what we call just below as we start up. It's a function. We don't pass it any parameters. If we just log out, init, and then we call this.hub get stories. So this is actually going to call out. Put that in there. This is going to call out into our scrumboard hub. Call this method. We're going to get our collection, and then the C# code will call back to a function called populate stories, which we should probably really define right now. I'm going to copy and paste it in because I'm fast running out of time. Okay, populate stories. So this is going to be the array from the C# code. We write out populate stories, and then we do a basic select or a map, and we new up a new class called story, which I haven't defined yet, and then we sort of initialize the observable array with this story collection. So story is the missing piece there. It's basically going to be another sort of JavaScript view model or a sub view model. Bang. There it is. It just has the same sort of stuff, but it's got observable ID, title, description, and state, so it should just bind sort of magically. And that should be it. Right, let's run this and see what happens. If we're lucky, it'll work. Okay, there we are. That is magic. So, if I just flip to the console, so we've initted and we've populated stories. So what this is basically doing is we've got nothing but an H1 really, and then we've got sort of the JavaScript tool kicking off. We create a new Scrum board view model. We start the hub. We call init. We've already got a connection to our Scrum board hub as defined here. Init calls this.hub.getStories, which is on the server side, and that's really the cool part, I think, is that it's just explicitly calling out to the server side. And what's even cooler is, oh dear, cooler as in cool, not cool. It calls back from the server side back into the JavaScript, calling this, giving it an array. Knockout and SignalR are all doing the serialization for us. This is really quite easy to work with, and then we basically map that back into the KnockoutJs observable array. So that's pretty cool. Right, the next thing to do is to be able to add an additional story onto this observable array. So what we're going to do is I'm firstly going to slap a simple form in. There is going to be some copy and paste again, I'm sorry. If I just stick it at the top here, bang. So this is going to bind onto our Scrum board view models. It's going to call a function when you submit called add story, which doesn't exist yet, and it's going to bind title and description properties, which also don't exist yet. So we need to sort them out initially. So if we just say this .title is an observable array. Did I not? Oops, sorry. New story. If this works perfectly, then we should see that form element defined sort of up here be predefined with new story. Okay, we've got observable, new description. Okay, so we've got title and description that should bind to these things, and now we need to define this function called add story. I'm going to copy and paste it in because the wife's not happy. Okay. There it is. So add story is a function accepts a new story, which will be the form collection. We create a new JavaScript object out of it with the title properties, and then we call create story on the hub. Create story doesn't exist yet, and then we reset them to nothing. So on the hub, we call create story, and let's just define this really simple. Public void create story story not story card new story. Just reformat it. Okay, and then all we're going to do, really you should persist it of course, but all we're going to do is call caller added story, and we're just going to give the same one straight back. Ugh, added story. I'll just to emphasize the point. There you go. That should go via some sort of repository. Added story. This doesn't exist yet. So what we need to do is in here define added story. I think I've got one that I'm going to copy and paste in because I'm running out of time. If not running out of time, ran out of time, sorry. Okay, so this is attached to the hub, and we basically log it out, and then we push a new story, given the one that we've been, we've passed through from the server. We new up a new JavaScript story, ID, title, description, state, and then we push it onto the observable array, and that should work. Okay, I'm sure I screwed something up there. Moment of truth. Well, hey. Okay, clicking add should have added something onto it. It didn't. Damn. Well, it says success. Not quite sure what happened there. Where's it going? Okay. What's gone wrong? Added story, stories push, new story, Where's the Scrum board hub? Is it the naming convention? Yes. Okay, sorry. There you go. So we've just proven that we can call from the client side the server side. The server side calls back the client side and then adds it onto our observable array. And that's basically the tutorial. I'm sorry this is a bit long and messy, but yeah, that's it. But yeah, SignalR is pretty cool. I've actually got a better example where you can actually drag cards and things around, but I just could not get it down to a short time period. So, this is the pure bare bones. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed that. As before, if you go to my blog at d80.co.uk, you'll be able to find the tutorial. Thanks again. Bye.